Hello, everyone, and here we go again. I am here to introduce you to our wonderful trust attorney, Ian, because if you're a homeowner and you still have not made the decision to get a trust, we are here today to answer some questions that are just atypical of what's happening in the world today. Now, Ian is my trust attorney, and I got my trust quite a few years ago. And the interesting thing is, I'm a single person, but I still thought it was important to have a trust because I want my beneficiaries to do what I want them to do. Ian is located in Mission Valley, and he's been in business for over 26 years. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to ask him some questions and then hopefully get you to make a phone call or an email to then at least make the decision to have a consultation, right? At least get the consultation done, and then Ian, for each family, can then help you. So let's start in with the fact that I have a handful of families where the wife may have signed her rights away, and then the husband or whoever's on title are now the homeowners, but the wife and the children are no longer really have any rights. So for that particular scenario, what would you recommend that they do?
Thank you, Kathy. With that particular scenario, a lot of people think that it automatically goes to their family, that when they pass away, it's just an easy, the wife in this situation signs a document and it goes right to the county recorder, and now it's hers and the family's. But really, if the individual, if it's one person on the title, then it's going to go into probate. Mm-hmm. There is no beneficiary option or anything like that. So really what they need to do is create a living revocable trust, put the property into the trust, and set out who gets it upon their death.
Right. So let's explain to them what probate is, right? Because that is an interesting topic that unfortunately some people who did not get a trust are now experiencing that.
So really what probate is it's court. I mean, it's a thing that most people fear, whether it's with regard to this situation, divorce, bankruptcy, anything, they fear court, and they have good reason to, because it's costly, it's time consuming, and you may or may not get what you want. Mm-hmm. So probate is what happens when someone dies and there are assets in their name, and I'm talking about this specific probate. Mm-hmm. Assets are in their name, and the people that they leave behind need court orders to transfer the property.
Mm-hmm. And then how costly is it to go through probate versus having a consultation with you and then making a decision to get a trust?
Probate is very, very expensive. And relatively speaking, having a consultation with an experienced estate planning attorney such as myself is very minimal in comparison. When I say it's costly, it could be thousands upon thousands of dollars.
And I'll give you an example. I had a family where unfortunately they didn't get a trust, and the parents passed away, and thank goodness they at least had a will. So through probate, they were able to keep the property, but they had to pay over $21,000 for the attorney, another $15,000 for the realtor, and they still weren't making the payments. So then they had to worry about being in pre-foreclosure status. So you have all this other stress that is attained by not having the paperwork in place, right? So for example, if they would have had a trust, then the family would have automatically been able to keep the property and then just continue to make the payments and move on from there. The interesting thing is, if there's no loan on the property, right? Now they don't have the deed, now they have to buy the property. Hence, if they had a trust, then the deed just goes to them, and now they don't actually have to purchase the home. So there's a lot of different scenarios that happen. So let's talk about, so that's an interesting thing, because probate is very, very expensive, right? And for us, a lot of people don't want to talk about this, but at the end of the day, especially if you're the breadwinner, we want to be able to make sure that the family is managed accordingly, right? So let's talk about the children, because when you do a trust, it's not just your assets, it also has to do with what do you want to happen if you become incapacitated, right?
Well, actually, estate planning in general, there are a multitude of documents. So a trust is the big one. You know, a basic estate plan consists of at least 4 documents. We're talking about a trust, a will, a power of attorney, an advanced healthcare directive. And going down the path of what you are describing, not only are we dealing with the assets in the trust, but if we're dealing with guardianship over children, that would be in the will. Dealing with healthcare decisions, the advanced healthcare directive, and the power of attorney is for financial decisions while you're still alive but incapacitated. So
Right.
Go ahead.
And that's an interesting thing, because I think when people think of trust, it's not just when you're not here, it's also if you become incapacitated. So in your advanced directive, depending on what you want to be done, you're allowing your family the opportunity to understand what it is that you want versus them guessing. Because most people think, hey, I went into the hospital, I filled out an advanced directive, but that's only for that one-time event. It's not an actual notarized piece of paperwork that your family understands, because remember, you know, you can have your family, but when things happen and all of a sudden all these other family members come and they can potentially make a decision that you may not want. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mhm.
Correct. I mean, ultimately, you do want to get it in writing. You want to get it notarized, and then you want to keep it in a safe place and make sure that it's available so that the institutions that your family is dealing with have your declared wishes, and these are the things that the institution is going to need before they allow you to make decisions and before they feel confident that they're not going to get in trouble, right?
Right. And that brings about another point, because I could be married, but I may still appoint someone else to make my decision for me. And other people have to understand that, yeah, we're married, and most of the time your spouse really knows what you want, but at the end, I can still choose who I want to execute whatever my wishes are. I think the other thing is it allows the family the opportunity to take a step back and be able to do what you actually want them to do. When we're talking about the trust, I mean, I believe that the investment in itself is worth it versus having to worry about probate. And at the end of the day, Ian, as far as your side is concerned, do you have like a success story from a family who, because you obviously, if you do trust, right, then do you also deal with probate?
Yes, a lot less probate nowadays, but I handled quite a few probate matters when I was a little bit younger. So, I mean, I have, and in 26 years of practice, I have tons of stories on both sides, from probate to successes of getting a trust done, you know, at last minute, getting it done. The individual is diagnosed with some terminal disease. We're rushing. I mean, people think that estate planning takes months upon months upon months. And yes, if we had that time, we would like to think that we would be able to think things through and all of that. But sometimes we are up against a deadline, for lack of a better word. And you know, we have been successful in making sure that this individual who is facing their last moments can get their wishes taken care of once they do pass over. And so, so I guess I don't know, success stories versus really hardships. You know, I would like to promote that I'm more successful than the matters I've handled in probate, but there are some real terrible stories out there on probate. So, and where we're talking, you know, we mentioned thousands of dollars being spent. I've been involved in probate matters. You mentioned a matter that you knew of. I've been involved in probate matters where there were hundreds of thousands of dollars just on the attorney fees and the representative fees alone. So So I'm not sure if I answered your question,
Well,
but
that is good enough. So at the end, so the other thing that's good about the trust, because most of the time it's what is revocable, right? Which means you can make changes to it. So as life changes and moves on, all you have to do is go back to your, you can go back to Ian if you choose Ian and make those changes. But most of the time, you can also kind of predict the future, right? Your future grandchildren, right? And
yes.
things like that.
Yes, I mean, you can not only set up so that your children are entitled to assets, but in the hopefully unlikely situation where one of your child predeceases you, you can set it out to their children. So yeah, you can do a flow chart of beneficiaries is what I call it.
Right, right.
So that the trust will always be in effect, regardless of events that foreseeable events that may happen.
Mhm. And then when does a revocable trust become irrevocable, which means you can't make any changes?
So it really depends on the terms of the trust. So the general concept is it becomes irrevocable on your death, right? Or possibly even on your incapacity, depending upon the terms of the trust. But then we get the situation where you have a married couple that don't want it to become revocable on the death of the first spouse.
Mhm.
And we can set it up that way so that it passes through to the surviving spouse without restrictions, without locking it down, without making it irrevocable.
And then that brings about another point about blended families, right? Because we have people who are married, not married, but also live in a household where their children are their children, their children are their children, but yet they're a blended family. And I think that's one of the more important things as well, whether you get a trust, you get a will, is to identify what are you going to do with your portion. Is it going to go pass through right to your spouse, or are you going to take it and then, you know, distribute it among all the children?
Right. And we can set that up. I mean, with the trusts are flexible enough that if you are worried about this having a blended family and the possibility of outside influences, the quote gold digger situation, right? We can set it up so that some of the assets, at least some of the assets, are preserved to pass through the second death, meaning the surviving spouse's death, so that all the beneficiaries are still seen as what the original intent was to be.
Right. And then again, it brings about that if I'm married and I'm with my spouse, sometimes the children think, right, they don't live in the house. But then we also, as an individual and as a couple, we also have to make sure we protect ourselves so that they can stay in the home if they choose. Or, and again, this is all the planning that you can do. And I think one of the things that people usually take a step back is they think, one, it takes a lot of time. But if you have the consultation, at least get it started. You'll be surprised how fast you can predominantly get it done. And most importantly, feel a sigh of relief that you know you have your most important asset, right? I have families who spend tens of thousands of dollars doing a kitchen, but won't take the time. And it's not the money, right? It's not the money that's stopping them. It's the fact that they don't want to have this conversation. So if you want more information, I highly recommend that you get a consultation with Ian. What phone number can they reach you at, Ian?
I think my number's up there, but it's 619-546-9777.
Great. And we look forward to helping you protect your biggest asset, which is your home. We'll talk to you soon.